Well, you remember just last week a firestorm erupted after reports that Wendy's was planning on testing out dynamic pricing at restaurants south of the border.
But some people responded to the report with concern and anger that dynamic pricing was another term for surge pricing, something that companies like Uber used to do to alter prices based on supply and demand. Wendy's CEO, Kirk later clarified that the burger company will not be implementing surge pricing, but it certainly got a lot of people talking about this practice.
And we're going to talk more about it right now with Brock University's Associate Professor of Marketing, Eric Delansky. Good to have you join us this morning to talk about this. It's interesting, you know, when we come to like booking hotels, as you point out, we kind of expect it depending on the time of year or what's happening around it. But when it comes to food, the idea of dynamic or surge pricing kind of doesn't work for a lot of people, does it?
No, it really doesn't. And there's two reasons for this. One has to do with just expectations and norms and what's done. So like you said, with hotels, we've come to expect that. With airlines, we expect that. Uber's done a good job in terms of an effective job at getting us used to that idea for their service. And the other thing has to do with value. We don't understand why a Frosty from Wendy's would cost a different amount at a different time of day, because we don't necessarily see a different value at a different time of day.
So, Eric, would the situation be different, let's say, if there's a restaurant where an item is in high demand, let's say it is the Frosty and it's the summertime and people line up for this Frosty and it does create that kind of pressure, like there's this high demand. Is it the lack of that obvious demand, like seasonal or whatever, that makes the surge pricing situation just not viable for fast food restaurants like Wendy's?
That's one reason, but another reason is competition. If there's a long line at the drive-thru at Wendy's, I can go to McDonald's, I can go to Burger King, I can go to A&W and get a similar product. If I want to fly from Toronto to, say, London, England, yes, there's a few airlines that I can choose from, but they all follow the same type of pricing scheme. So I can't really go anywhere else to get something at a stable price. Whereas with this Wendy's, unless McDonald's and A&W and all these other chains do the same thing, then they're going to be at a disadvantage in those situations.
Professor, also, is part of this not sort of the positioning of it? I mean, you know, bars and restaurants have happy hour, which is where they sort of discount food or beverages as it is, sort of bring people in during quiet times. Would it have been different if they'd sort of just changed it to sort of a, you know, it's cheaper now, or you know what I mean, rather than saying it's going to be surge pricing, you're going to pay more if there's demand?
Certainly, framing is very important in how we view these things. So you're absolutely right. You know, if I frame this as a discount, Frosties are going to be less in the morning or in the middle of the afternoon, depending on what they see as their demand patterns, then yeah, people would be much more likely to look at it in a positive light, as opposed to it's going to be more expensive when it's busier.
Okay, so I'm very confused about why they even put out a statement for dynamic or surge pricing. Wouldn't it have been just smarter to do what everyone else is kind of doing, is just raise the prices secretly and not say anything, hoping people just slowly notice, oh, it's the cost of living, everything's more expensive.
Yeah, I'm not a huge fan of the word secretly in that situation.
Right.
Because it implies something, but yes, and having read what Wendy's put out as an apology, not quite an apology, but a retraction of this idea that they were going to do it, they definitely framed it as, we talked about that we have the capability to do that with electronic menu boards and stuff. So they tried to spin it that way. But yes, I mean, if they had raised the price of some menu items by 5%, 10%, unless people go there all the time, they're probably not going to notice, as you said.
Okay, very interesting stuff. Eric Delansky, Associate Professor of Marketing at Brock University. Appreciate your time and insight this morning. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.